Fabiano here at Radio C. We're just going to make a quick video to answer one of the questions we get asked more than anything else, which is how do I get my brand new Naze board to work? With Cleanflight specifically. So, the first thing you're going to need to do to get it connected up to your computer is install some drivers. Now, if you go to our website and look at any of the Naze descriptions, the drivers are linked. So here, drivers for USB connection are here, which takes us to the Silicon Labs website. Here we can see Windows, XP, blah, 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 all the different versions of Windows. Here are the drivers. If you have Windows 2K, obviously they're down here, but you probably don't. So, clicking that will get the drivers to download, which we will open. And you just want to run the installer for the appropriate version. We have a 64-bit version of Windows here. So I will run this one. If you have 32-bit Windows, you need to run the x86 one. If you're not sure what version of Windows you've got, go to your Start menu and right-click Computer and hit Properties. And it will tell you System Type 64-bit Operating System. So, we will click this, agree to whatever it asks, the usual next. Obviously that process was quick because I actually already had them installed on this computer, but if you don't, it will take a little bit longer, and once it's done, hit finish. And that's it in terms of drivers. You should now, if you want to go to your device manager, under ports, you should now see Silicon Labs CP210X, etc, etc, etc. It will also tell you what COM port it's on, which might be of interest later. So having done that, we want to install Chrome. If you haven't already got it, just Google the word Chrome and then install it from here. I'm going to assume you've already got it. If not, then just download for personal computers. Once that's done, you want to Google just the term Cleanflight. See this top results, Cleanflight Configurator. That's the one you need. And choose this option, Add to Chrome. And you'll then see it downloading here. It should only take a few moments. Now once it's done, if you didn't have this icon here before, that is the Google Chrome Apps icon, so that's where you'll find your Cleanflight. And you can just open it by clicking on it, which will take you to this default Cleanflight screen. Okay, so we're going to go straight to the firmware flasher. If you try and connect before flashing, it won't work. It will just give you an error. So go straight to the firmware flasher. We're going to choose full chip erase because we want to take off the settings that are already on this board. You actually won't need to do that with a brand new board. And we're going to choose I'm going to choose 1.9.0 Naze. Now later, if you do this later, it might not be 1.9.0 anymore, but you want to make sure that you choose the Naze, the latest Naze, assuming you are, of course, using a Naze. Having done that, click Load Firmware Online, which is down here at the bottom. This will sometimes take a moment. And once it's done, the latest release info will flash up here. You can then scroll back to the bottom and click Flash Firmware. This will just take a moment. If you get an error at this stage, you probably didn't get those drivers installed correctly. So just go back and make sure the drivers are installed. And go to here, your device manager, and just check that there's not a unknown hardware or whatever plugged in which case you've got a driver issue. But generally the drivers are the only thing that would cause an issue at that stage. So once we've got the flash and it says programming successful, we can scroll back to the top, and just click connect, which will take us to the default screen. Now from here you'll be able to see the orientation of your board. If we move your board around, you'll see the quadcopter moves. If it doesn't and it's a bit sluggish, it means your gyroscope hasn't configured yet, and just wait a moment, and if after a minute it's still not working, maybe try reflashing. Right, so let's go through and run through some basic settings. Let's go to configuration. This is the default settings. Now, receiver mode, RX parallel PWM. PWM is the default mode. If you don't know what mode you should be using, then you're probably correct to use PWM. If you've got, for example, one of our FS-I6 transmitters, then you can use PPM. Here, motor stop is motor stop will stop your motors spinning up when you haven't got throttle. So let's say, for example, you've armed your quadcopter, but you haven't throttled it up, and you decide to pick it up off the floor, which is a bad move to make without motor stop. The motors will start spinning because it's going to try and auto level itself, even with 0 throttle. So to solve that, and to stop us accidentally cutting off our fingers, we're going to click motor stop. And then we're going to save and reboot in the bottom right hand corner. It will say up here, device rebooting and device ready, means we're good to move on. Okay, this is the PID tuning screen. The defaults are the multi-wee old configuration. Just leave it here for now. We'll worry about PIDs later. If you're just starting, multi-wee old is probably an acceptable config. The rates are all going to be at 0. Again, if you've never flown before, these are actually, zeros are pretty good. If you want to be able to do flips and stuff, then you can set these a bit more aggressive. Something like, 0.3 is probably a fair beginner setup, something like that, and maybe 0.1 for the TPA. So 0.3, 0.3, 0.3, 0.1. Or if you want it to be really aggressive, you can go up to like 0.5. I don't advise going any higher than this if you haven't flown before. Once you've got some experience, you can come back and reevaluate these, and make sure you save them in the bottom right. Okay, the receiver tab. This is just to check that your receiver inputs are working. If you move the sticks around on your transmitter, provided you've got everything powered on and wired in correctly, you should see responses here. Modes, you want to make sure you're flying in angle mode if you haven't flown before. So add a range to that. In your auxiliary 1 switch, you want to make sure that in the default position, which should be the up position, which is probably here, that angle is selected. If you're not sure, do something like this and just make sure that it is constantly in angle mode. Later, as you get good, you'll want to add horizon in with settings more like this maybe, so that you can do some acrobatic flying. And later you'll want to have manual mode, which maybe use settings more like this and give yourself some space for manual. But that's all that matters for now. This doesn't matter. None of this matters. Motors. Now, this is where you can test that your motors work. So by clicking here and dragging these up, you can test your motors spin up when given commands and spin in the correct directions. You can also drag them all up and down at the same time using the master. Now, what you do want to do here before you fly for the first time is do a motor calibration, which means that you want to make sure your main battery is unplugged. Click here, drag the master slider up, plug your master battery back in, and it should do a little sequence of beeps. Once the patterns of beeps is finished, you can drag this slider all the way back down and you'll get some more beeps. And once that pattern of beeps is finished, your motor calibration is done. If you get weird behavior when you fly, you probably need to do this stage. And that's basically it. You should make sure you put the quadcopter on a flat surface and do an accelerometer calibration as well before you fly for the first time. But that is it. With those settings done, you are ready to make your first flight. Good luck.